Hey everybody, Big Toad here. This video is showing you how I fixed a painting I had. And it's a rock face with a waterfall. And I got to a point where I just didn't like it. And I think we've all been there. And so I spent about 5 hours on this painting. And 3 of them ended up being in a 3-part video, 1 hour each. I broke it down into 3 1-hour videos, a lot of editing in order to break it down into 3 hours, and I just realized that it's probably too much for most people. I do have those videos out there and available for you to watch if you want to, where you can see as I paint in regular speed, and I talk through my process and what I'm thinking about when I'm doing this. And it could be educational if you want to see how and why I chose to do what I did. That's how you do it. So my problem was the style and method I was using just was not working for what I was trying to get to emotionally with this painting. So I went to a very small brushstroke technique to put in the details, to frame in the waterfall. And so I mixed up a lot of variations of gray, and you'll see some yellow in this painting. I mixed up some variations of sulfur looking colors because I wanted some sulfur leaching out of the mountain, and various greens. I came up with 4 or 5 different greens, as well as some darker purples and dark blues and such for the shadows on the mountain, as part of this mountain was tucked away deep into the shadows. So yeah, this is about 5 hours worth of work that at the easel. It did not count the time I spent mulling over how to fix it and where to go next with the painting. It was a small painting as far as scale and size. I did this on like an 8x10 or 8.5x10 or by 11. I don't remember exactly, but anyway, it was a big painting from the perspective of the imagery I was trying to create. And so to create the illusion of detail, I went to a lot of small brush strokes around the waterfall and on the face of that mountain. And you'll see me a lot of small brush strokes. And you think, oh, that's so tedious. It became, though, for me, a very relaxing, methodical, soothing process to put in these brush strokes. So it wasn't a hardship at all for me. I would have even gotten more absorbed had I not been narrating my process as I went through it. But even still, it was a very relaxing, very soothing process. And honestly, that's part of why I paint. I paint for the creative outlet. I paint in order to get into those zones where I'm just relaxed and my brain is disengaged from anything but the very activity in which I'm involved in these individual strokes. And every stroke of my brush, even though it's small at this point, was laid out with the desire to create a river of color flowing down this mountain to frame in that waterfall and bring you to the final point of impact at the bottom of the waterfall. So you'll see me go over some places, but a lot of the brush strokes were the final ones in a lot of the painting. And so this video is 20 minutes long. And what the colors I've used, I've had the palette at the beginning, but obviously titanium white. Always you have to use a lot of titanium white, at least I do. And I used ultramarine blue, and there were a few cases, like in the shadows, where I applied ultramarine blue directly from the tube into those darker shadows. I in addition to the ultramarine blue and titanium white, I had alizarin crimson, which I used a little bit to mix in some of my darker colors. It's not a prominent color in this painting, because on the other side I used burnt sienna, which accounted for a lot of the reddish tones and such that I used in the painting. And there are some cases where I used it right out of the tube as well to really bring some emphasis and some contrast and just some life to the painting. It's a very brilliant painting as far as the colors. I don't use a lot of muted colors in this, but again, it's the values work because of the contrast between them. So also, in addition to crimson, alizarin crimson, and ultramarine blue, and burnt sienna, I used 2 cadmium yellows, cadmium yellow light and cadmium yellow medium. I love cadmium yellow light for the mixtures I can make in the various tones, and I really also love the cadmium yellow medium because it leans more towards the reds or the oranges, and there's a lot of opportunities for me to use it right out of the tube. And so there's my list of colors again. And so on the nature side of my palette, I already talked about the burnt sienna, but I also use yellow ochre and ivory black. Yellow ochre obviously is a natural looking yellow for my natural colors, and when I don't want to use the more stark cadmium yellows. And then ivory black is really my natural blue. It mixes in and takes the place of blue in a lot of cases. I will use the ultramarine blue often rather than the ivory black. I don't try not to overuse the ivory black. But in this painting, I do apply ivory black in a couple cases directly to the palette, or excuse me, directly to the painting itself, right to the board. And in the end result, I don't feel that it's overwhelming whatsoever. It mixes right in with the colors and tells the story I want it to tell. So I do use ivory black some in darkening my colors. It's just faster sometimes, especially when I'm trying to get some of my grays. I mean, I can mix all these colors without it, but I just enjoy the speed at which, to be honest, ivory black is a lazy color. I won't deny that. But I find it a quick shortcut to getting to darken some colors and to create some nice grays with it, and various hints and hues of gray and tints and values. So, and now you can see here I'm getting to the point now where I've started to put in the greenery, the green trees, and those. I'm creating a map on this painting where everything flows to that river, and the brush strokes and of the color of the greens are leading you towards the river as well. So that's the interesting thing about this painting in my composition that I chose to do, is you have the mountain on the left side of the river, which the river is outlined down the center. I'll save that in for last to paint that in. But on the left side, all the lines come straight down until almost to the bottom in that really dark, and then you'll see my brush strokes begin to curve towards the final landing spot of that waterfall. And then you go to the right side and you'll see some of that direct down facing, the direct brush marks coming straight down. Close to the waterfall, but then you'll see where I create in brush strokes and lines of color that follow the slope of the mountain off to the right, and then that follow from center of that right side. Then they begin to taper back down, creating shelves and creating contour. And so the very brush strokes themselves tell the story. It's not just about color. The brush strokes create also and add to the composition as well. And these fine brush strokes that I've used to this point have created and helped to create this the illusion of detail. And that's what these small brush strokes do. They create the illusion of detail. When you see those little brush strokes, you say the artist must have plan these brush strokes to mean something, and so it creates that illusion of detail with the small brush strokes. And that's the style I wanted for this painting. That's the style I decided I would use to save it. And now I'm working on the banks of this river down low, up close. This is more in shadow, so I'm using some darker colors, using some of the darker colors that I found up on the mountain that I used. And I'm also going to discover some colors that I mix for this river at the bottom along the shore that I feel will add some value to the painting. So I tap them in and place some brush strokes up that same color above. I try not to use a color only once, so I used a kind of a more orange hued color down at the bottom, and I just really felt like if I'm going to use it there, I need to bring it into the top as well. Try not to ever only use a color in one place only is my kind of one of my rules. It's nature. I can move that same color around. So, and I think the eye enjoys that. I think the eye finds peace in that. The harmony of that color is somewhere else. Even if your mind doesn't recognize it, your mind's eye feels at peace, I believe, with that kind of thing. So now I'm working on the trees to the right, trying to add in the illusion of detail there. I'm starting to get into bigger strokes when I'm down here, bigger paint strokes, because this is where this is going to be less detailed down in this area. So I don't want to over detail this and have your eye get stuck. So how do I do that? I'm going to go with larger strokes and darker colors. And I'm actually went and dipped right into my ivory black for that corner there on the left. And I'm not afraid to use ivory black straight in there, and I put some more in there right there, especially because I'm using this darker green and I'm blending that over into it with my brush strokes. So the ivory black never really showed up as ivory black. It always had a tint of green to it. And so these little strokes, again, I'm pulling out. What I didn't want to do is didn't want my rocks to be over my trees. So I made sure that my brush strokes for my trees went over my rocks, because trees are always taller, or in this case at least, taller than the banks. So I wanted those there. All right, now I'm filling in on the left side, that left slope. And I'm starting to phase in over there as well, and now I'm back to the right. Got to fix a little sunshiny spot where the sun's hitting that side. Over here on the left, I'm starting to use larger strokes of paint. You'll see that, blending that over. Again, why? I want the eye to move away from that and towards the detail along the river, and then follow that river right up to the mountain and up the mountain face. So the larger brush strokes are necessary in order to bring my eye away from that and get drawn to the detail. So this painting is composed of the detail. Now I'm taking a short time here to go over what I've painted in, and look at this broader strokes I use over here on the right. I'm showing you that. Again, it doesn't hurt the drawing. It doesn't hurt the painting. It doesn't remove value or detail from the painting. It actually is comfortable. Those larger strokes feel comfortable. Okay, so now I'm going to start into the waterfall. And I'm going to start by laying down a very light blue at the back of the waterfall. That way, if any of the if that color shows through, it's that natural sky type blue. And I'm going to bring that up on the lower waterfall as well, being careful to keep it within the confines of the river. And now I go back up to the top and start adding in what's nearly titanium white with a little bit of that sky blue, and portions and pieces. It's okay to have some bright white there, because of just the vibrance of this painting allows me because I wasn't shy. I was bold in my color choices. I was bold in my painting. I was bold, even though the strokes were small, I was bold with them. And there's a lot of paint on this little board, and there's a lot of texture on this little board, so it allows me to go in there because of all these things with a color that's almost titanium white out of the tube, and in some cases it is, but it has some mixtures of that light blue in it as well, to create texture. I'm going to come back down and do some more work on that waterfall at the bottom, and I'm going to add in some structure. Now I use this palette knife here to just put in a little bit of color where you can just barely see that river. And the thing that I want to do there, and why I did that, now I'm working on putting in the mist from the falling waterfall. The reason I really hid a lot of that river there at the bottom of the waterfall is I didn't want my river to look like it was on top of the landscape. And so I allowed the landscape to obscure a big portion of that river right at the bottom of that waterfall. I think it did a couple things. One, it emphasized the bottom of the waterfall more. And it also, like I said, pushed that river back behind the landscape. Now all this mist from the waterfall is actually in front of the landscape, so it can be prominent. And that's the beauty of doing this kind of waterfall, is the water is above the landscape. And now I'm going back and doing some negative painting. I'm painting back in some darkers to help shape my mist. And here I'm at the bottom again, painting in some rocks that are just hinted at. Now the sky needs to match both style and color to the rest of my painting. So it was really ugly, especially as I became more and more ugly as I began to put more and more paint on my mountain. And so now I'm going back in with a very light sky blue, similar to what I used at the base or the inside that waterfall. And I want to cover this canvas. And I do work at this color in the sky for a little bit, trying to get the right hues of blue. And so I want to get the right values. I want it to be vibrant without overpowering, and so I'm working into it subtly. I need more blue in there, I know I do, and so I come back in with some darker blue here, ultramarine blue, to start working it out. And I'm getting there. But along the way, right about now, I realize, holy cow, I've just put a halo around my mountain, which is ugly. So I have to come back in and paint upwards into my blue sky. And I struggle a little bit on this little palette, or excuse me, on this little painting, to not, again, overwhelm my blues. And so I've gone too far, so I got to bring some more blues down. It happens to all of us, and you just jump forward a little bit. But now I have the feel I want, the feel I want in the sky. I'm coming down to the bottom, and I'm adding in some more color to create more flow. But I don't want to take away those broad brush strokes. I'm just adding a little bit of these smaller detail brush strokes to add contour. And here I'm signing my name, Big Toad. And someday I'll tell you why I use Big Toad instead of signing my real name. It just feels good. All right, let's get in close and look. You can see the brush strokes I used and how small they are, but how much paint I applied. I enjoyed this method of painting. I've done it on some other paintings before. Obviously it's not my first attempt, that's why I went ahead and used it here. I just enjoy the small brush strokes, and every one of them having meaning and purpose, and then melding into the larger ones. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something, and I do have individual videos at slow regular speed if you want to watch those. But for now, this is the Big Toad, and I am out.